This podcast represents my opinion and the opinion of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I am not establishing a patient-physician relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions you may have.
Everybody, I'm Vanessa. I'm back with you for another episode of the Not Your Doc podcast. I'm here today with Dr. Charles Tadros.
Howdy.
Hey. And we have our, I guess I was the first interview on this pod, so we have our second interview guest with us today. And that is our wonderful producer, Seth Gabriel. How are you doing today, Seth?
I'm doing great.
Good.
This is awesome. I'm usually tucked away in this corner, just quiet and taking my notes. Now I got a microphone. I get to talk.
You're in the hot seat now. You're in the hot seat now. Oh, gosh.
I can feel the pressure. It's like you two sitting on that side of the table, and I'm over here just to paint a picture for everybody. So it's like an interrogation.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
But instead of turning the heat up in here, you turn it way down.
It's very chilly.
A little bit chilly.
You could store meat in here. I had to put my jacket back on. No, it's nice. It's actually pretty comfortable.
So Dr. Tadros and I were talking about our approach today, and it's going to be a lot like an interrogation. He's going to ask the questions, and I'm going to be paying attention to your body language so we don't miss anything.
There's no good cop?
And then, no.
Just
we're
two
just
bad
cops. Switch off. We're both trying to catch you. So
two bad cops. You get two bad cops.
That's right. So bad and worse.
So
bad cop, worse cop.
Seth, you are the owner and founder of Benton Park Media, which is a multimedia production and marketing firm here in St. Louis. When did you open that company?
Oh, well, technically it's been about a year and a half, and I really like the term firm. I sound like it's really huge. It's a little bit bigger than this dining room we're in right now.
Hey, it works.
But no, I do videography, graphic design. I'll work with anybody from small business to local entertainers, musicians, podcasters, people like that, local comedians. I've done a little work for here and there. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been about a year and a half. And it got off to an incredibly slow start.
Yeah.
But I'm working now with my business partner from Outlaw Film, Seth Ferrante. He was the producer of White Boy, the documentary on Netflix.
Cool.
Yeah, he's got like 25 books published now. He's working on other films. So he kind of threw me a life preserver and said, let's team up.
Yeah.
And ever since then, things have been going great, and I'm a little overwhelmed these days, but I'm handling it. I like it. It keeps me busy, Yeah. I'm a single guy in the city just doing what I love.
That's awesome. Seth, so obviously we know you through Benton Park Media, which is Benton Park Studios originally. You are currently rebranding and about to launch a new website for Benton Park Media, so people can look forward to that soon.
I'll tell you why. Benton Park Studios is the original name. You can still find that on Facebook. Then I found out there's a Benton Park Studio of a guy in his apartment that just like paints fruit or something. Oh. And I'm sure it's great, but he's got like the Google. He's got the Google analytics and SEO on his side. So if you try to find me, you'll probably find him. Even if you don't. Even if you type the fruit basket art. I don't want to accidentally take credit for anybody's fruit basket art.
Right. That's true. That's true. So we'd hate for the fruit basket artist to get credit for your work too. So it's vice versa.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe we can team up on something, but we will be on the lookout for Benton Park Media November, December timeframe, which is pretty much now coming right up.
All right, that's awesome. One of the reasons that, actually you volunteered, but at the time when our listeners are going to be hearing this episode, it's going to be the week of Veterans Day.
Right.
And you were actually a sergeant in the Army. You were a cavalry scout, and you worked on reconnaissance and have been deployed. So we're going to hear a lot about your experience and story today.
Okay.
And we're really looking forward to that. And we thank you so much for your openness to come talk to us. And
after hearing you give your story, I'm like, I think I'll tell mine.
Yeah.
It helped encourage me.
That's awesome.
Because I very rarely have talked about military outside of just like close friends, counselors, and family and stuff like that.
Interesting. So. Well, we feel really privileged that you're willing to share some of that stuff with us today.
It's a privilege to be here.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Tadros, who is obviously the interviewer extraordinaire, and I'll get to work monitoring your respirations and see if you start sweating profusely at any point. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
We're here to listen to you and learn from you.
Shaky.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Vanessa is the real interviewer here. She'll give me hand signals of what I'm saying and not saying. Seth, you and I talked just to kind of figure out the arc of your story. And as a physician, I see things differently than other people, so I tend to delve in childhood and stuff like that. But I think you and I talked about how a little bit about you want to express childhood and how you ended up in the military and your experiences, not just your own, but some of your friends and what you saw in terms of your friends. And we're kind of keeping it medical and personal. And although we can take it a bunch of different ways, I wanted to hear about you and how you got here so that you could be our producer. You were able to, all your experiences that led you to be owner of a business. So take it away.
Awesome. Well, let me tell you a story about the day me and my good friend Nathan went out for some pizza. You want to hear that?
Yeah, I want to hear that story.
Oh,
I love a good pizza story.
That's a great. You're like, oh, this guy's going to tell some riveting stuff. And it's like, well, me and my buddy Nate, we're going to go get pizza. First, let me paint you a picture. I'm about 19, 20 years old at the time. Shaggy haired, hat kicked to the side, skater kid. Post-high school graduate, barely. When I showed up to class, I did great. I just hated school. So, there was that. My Civic had broken down. I was working in different restaurants. I was driving around in my dad's Ford Ranger.
What city is this in?
Jacksonville, Illinois.
Okay,
so we're up by Springfield, Illinois.
Right, cool.
We're just about a little over an hour north of St. Louis City.
Yeah.
So that's where I grew up. And that's the kind of town where... I really wanted out. There's not much to do. There's bars, there's warehouses, there's liquor stores, there's drugs, if you're into that. Let's just face it. But there's nice parts of the town, too, of course. Sure. It's maybe just under 30,000, I think.
Yeah.
And it's near, like I said, the capital, Springfield, Illinois. So it's got its ups and downs. But I was mainly focused on just the downs and wanting to get out of there and starting some kind of life for myself. But I was completely... I guess you can say lost. I wasn't like, I'm so lost, but I didn't know at the time, right. I guess, that I felt that way. And so me and my buddy Nate, we're skaters, and we're going out one day. We're like, let's hit the pizza buffet because, that's a lot of bang for your buck. We can put it away.
Right.
$8 and you can eat all you want.
Knock a pizza buffet.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're thinking it's between Godfather's and Pizza Hut. Not a huge fan of either one. So it's like the lesser of two evil. They're not sponsoring the show, are they?
No.
Not
so,
yet.
Okay,
Not
so
yet.
okay,
Not anymore, I guess.
They're both great. But so we settled on Pizza Hut, and we drive in. We park. We get out of my dad's Ford Ranger, and we're getting ready to walk inside. And it hits me, and I stop, and I go, let's go to Godfather's. And Nate's like, man, we're already here, whatever. I'm like, let's just go to Godfather's. It's right down the street. I have no idea why. I don't even like Godfather's. I mean, it's great, but I don't like it. So we get in the Ford Ranger, and we drive down, and we go to Godfather's. We eat. It's, what you pay for or whatever. It's decent, I guess. So we step out of Godfather's after that weird experience where I just felt the need to go there instead when we were already parked at the Pizza Hut. And outside's an Army recruiter. And he's like kind of waving at us, and Nate's like, man, these guys. There was two of them, and we already knew they were going to come up and give us the whole spiel. I'm like, oh, yeah. And at the time, my brother was in the Army. He'd been in the Army for just under 2 years now. So I kind of used that to kind of like, well, my brother's already in, and my parents are freaking out because he's going to deploy. So I'm just kind of, my interest is to stay home. And he's the recruiter. Of course, I got to answer for everything.
Right.
And he's like, well, there's jobs where, you don't have to get shot at, anything like that. And it's going to open great career possibility, great opportunities, things like that. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And then we finally get away from them. We're like, yeah, farthest thing from what I want to do. And then it just kind of hit me one night when I was at the pasta house filling up tubs of ice with an apron on, and all these nicely dressed people out to dinner just kind of looking at me, and I'm like, this isn't me. And it hit me. I go, I just had that feeling, ever since we were about to walk in that Pizza Hut, and I was like, I gotta go talk to that recruiter. So I ended up working with a recruiter, and I made the decision and finally told my parents, I was like, I'm gonna join the Army. And they're like, oh, great. My mom's already losing sleep because my brother's getting ready to deploy, and now they got another son that wants to join.
What year was this about?
This would have been the spring of 2006.
Okay. Your brother was going to deploy where? Or
He was getting ready to deploy to Iraq.
I got you.
So he was an infantryman. He's 11 Bravo.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a grunt. So I said, I want to be a medic. I loved the guy in Saving Private Ryan, that medic. He's awesome. I wanted to be like him. My mom's a nurse.
Yeah.
I was raised by a nurse. I have family that were medics in Vietnam.
Right.
We were told as children, you don't ever ask them about military. You don't say Vietnam around them.
Right.
Like, don't ever do that.
Yeah.
They're fine. Just don't ever bring anything up.
Right.
They had a pretty rough time
Absolutely.
in Vietnam, especially, well, I wouldn't say especially as medics because, PTSD and things like that don't discriminate.
Absolutely.
But
they certainly
the medics,
saw a tremendous amount of trauma.
the medics definitely have a tough time during the deployment and afterwards. So I didn't score high enough to be a medic on my test. I was a few points off. And my recruiter was a cavalry scout. And I said, well, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
So he's like, well, let me show you. And he shows me the cool video of the guys with their faces painted and they're sneaking through the woods. And he's like, you're the eyes on the battlefield. You're the eyes and ears. You go out there. It's reconnaissance. I'm like I'm a spy. I'm like an operative. It's like special forces kind of thing, but it's not. It's very mild compared to special forces, but it is a very tough and grueling MOS, which for those who are
help
familiar,
us out with the acronyms.
Military occupational specialty. Your job.
Right,
It's your job. What's your job in the military? Some people say, "What's your job?" or "What's your MOS?" It's the same question. So I was a cavalry scout, and I was hooked on that idea, and I told everyone, and I was like, I can't wait. I'm gonna go train. I was so nervous about the training, I forgot that there were 2 wars going on that I could possibly go to.
Wow.
So and everybody, my parents, my brother even called me from Fort Riley. He's like, I heard you want to be a scout. He's like, are you sure? I go, I'm 100% it. I got no kids, not any real job I care about, no direction. I knew already I wanted to get into like media, radio, television, and work behind the scenes.
Where'd you get that sense that you wanted media?
Oh, wow. That goes all the way back to when my dad had one of those giant 1980s, early 90s Best Buy camcorders.
Yeah.
And me and my brother used to get it out and film just whatever.
Sure.
We made movies with our action figures. I drew my own comic books. If I didn't like album art for an album, I'd draw my own.
I love it.
This would be better.
Yeah.
And I just always, was drawn to creating stuff like that for people to see, visual art.
And people think cavalry have horses. So modern cavalry is what?
You could be walking. You could come in on a Black Hawk helicopter. You could be on a Bradley, which a lot of people look at that as civilian. Look at a Bradley and like, oh, that's a tank.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Essentially a tank, but it's an armored vehicle.
Gotcha.
I was on a Humvee a lot.
Gotcha.
So pretty much anything but a horse.
All right.
One guy in basic training was upset. He literally thought we were going to get to ride around on horses.
Man.
He was bummed to find out that
no.
it's kind of an antiquated way to get around as a soldier these days. So, that was my experience.
Just born in the wrong century, man. Yeah.
Basically.
So your brother didn't try to talk you out of it?
Everybody wanted to make sure I was 100% sure that that's what I wanted to do. And I just kept saying, it's too late to say no. I didn't have it in me to say, never mind. Because, I had a friend tell me like, that's a suicide mission, but good luck. And then came to the day where, we were ready to, ship out finally. I was put on, I forgot the name of the list. They have names for everything. I was on the list of people who, like, because of my MOS that I'd chosen, nobody's ready to take that in yet. So you're just basically going to be working with a recruiter. Jog, don't do any drugs or smoke any weed.
Right.
Take care of yourself. Study the handouts they give you. And then in September 2006, my mom knocked on my door and said, it's time to go. And I woke up and went to the bathroom and just threw up.
Wow.
Could barely function. I was so nervous.
Yeah.
And my brother was home at the time because he was on his pre-deployment leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he was home.
Wow.
And we had a big cookout and a party for both of us because I was shipping to basic. He's shipping to Iraq.
Yeah.
And he's knocking on the bathroom door. He goes, dude, if you're this nervous, just don't go. He goes, this is the last opportunity to say no. And I was like sitting there like, I'm going to go. So I grabbed my bag and left. My parents took me to the recruiter station to get on a shuttle. Mm-hmm. To take me to St. Louis, to take me to MEPS, and then to Lambert, and then to Kentucky, Fort Knox.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Did you have friends go with you, or were other people deploying?
No, I was just 100% all alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
First time doing something this big all alone?
Oh, yeah. First time being on a plane alone. First time being that far away. The farthest I'd ever been away from home is the hour and 20-minute drive to St. Louis.
Yeah. When
I was a teenager, I got my license. Everybody would like to go down to St. Louis and hang out,
right?
Get into trouble. So, yeah, it's definitely... That was... the first big leap was just getting up and going.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What do you think gave you the fortitude to do that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was weird. It's just like I felt like I was running away.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's like, but you want to get out of your town.
The alternative was worse in some way, like staying and.
The alternative was kind of like is almost the same thing. It's like I don't know what's going to happen to me if I stay here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to have what's going to happen to me if I go either.
Yeah.
But I was like, it just felt right. It just definitely felt like it's an opportunity. I wanted to go to college and do things, but I didn't even know how to go to college. It's like, how do you just go to college?
Yeah.
People are like, I applied for here and got accepted to this and did this and I got this many points for I'm like, I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
Like once I get done with my bachelor 0.5, I'll work on my degree for my associate 0.7. And I'm like, I don't know what college is.
Yeah.
But I don't.
You said your mom was a nurse and your brother was older than you then?
He is a couple of years older than me. He's a year and 11 months older than me.
And you have other siblings?
My sister is in her mid-40s.
Okay.
So
back then she was a little bit older. You're the youngest of three then? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there was that. Let's see. And then, of course, basic training starts. And trying to think here. Basic training. Do you have any specific questions about that? I could just...
Is it 6 weeks or is it how many?
I went for 18 weeks.
Okay.
I did 9 weeks of basic training, and it's called OSUT. It's an acronym for everything in the military.
Yeah, right.
One station unit training. So instead of going to AIT after basic, which I forgot what AIT stood for, Advanced Individual Training.
Okay, there we go.
Is what it is.
Right.
You do OSUT. You just do, instead of 9 and 9, you do 18 weeks of
right.
Essentially, basic training goes right into scout school.
Right.
And scout school is, and you know, we've talked on this podcast before about sleep deprivation, things like that a little bit. I mean, it's crazy. You're either in a classroom or you're in the wilderness, very little sleep, lots of ruck marching, lots of, wow, there's so many things that go through my head from being at Fort Knox. And then, of course, dealing with the drill sergeants. I mean, day one, you get off a bus and you just have people screaming at you. And you're kind of pumped. You're like, wow, this is real. Like you've seen this in movies, you've kind of pictured it or seen on TV, or maybe you've seen actual footage of basic. But when you're there, it's just like your heart's pumping and they're yelling at you. And the first thing they do is you get on a bus and they take you, get your head shaved. You get all your shots. You get tons of shots. You stand in line, and they just jab you with vaccines and different things, immunizations in both arms. There's a nurse on each side just jabbing you, and they're like, go, next. And then jab, jab, jab. Here's your paper. Go, next. And one guy getting jabbed, of course, passes out, smash, blood goes everywhere, back of his head cracked open. And I'm like, wow, I'm already seeing...
some
casualties.
We are like, I'm still waiting in line to get my head shaved. It's already getting out of control. So it's very grueling, very stressful, and that's what they do. That's the idea, is to break you down mentally, break you down physically, because they don't like who you are. You can't come off the street and be a soldier. You have to be nothing first, and then they turn you into a soldier. So the psychology behind it. It kind of works that way. They need to break you down into nothing. And now I guess they've really softened it up. I'm not going to repeat any of the language. The drill sergeants would scream in your face 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, anything like that. And I do remember, I'll go ahead and tell you, when we first got off the bus, when we go to meet our drill sergeants, bus comes to a stop, door flies open, sergeant comes on, he goes, get off this bus now! And everybody just jumps up, and you're like, oh, it's starting. So you grab all your duffel bags and you're getting off the bus as fast as you can, and people are knocking each other down. You get out and you line up and like, put your gear down, right? And you get all your duffel bags and you put them all and you line them all out. And then you go to stand in front of them. And then there's these drill sergeants that are just like wax sculptures. Like you feel like you could wave at them and they're just standing there completely motionless and emotionless. And the captain, he gives you a little speech, welcome to Fort Knox, or and blah blah blah, and then he goes on a history of this and that, and everybody, I don't remember what he said. And the whole time I'm sitting there like, this is completely crazy. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. So I'm sure whatever he said was great, very riveting. And then he said, okay, well, we're gonna get started now. Drill sergeants, they're all yours. Take over. And they just come storming. They come to life and just come running at you, screaming.
Wow.
And they're just yelling in your face. They said, you got 20 seconds to get lined up in alphabetical order, go. And everybody, you don't know anybody.
Right.
So we're looking at each other's name tags, like, okay, A's, get over here, B's, next. And we're just like trying to do this and get our duffel bags. And they start blowing whistles like, time's up. And everybody, of course, failed. So you have to get down. You start doing push-ups. And they're yelling at you while you're doing that. And I pop up and... Okay, you're not supposed to look at a drill sergeant, but no one tells you this, and there's not like a handout or any signs. So I look at a drill sergeant. We make pretty good eye contact. And
oh, boy.
He looks at me, and pardon my French, he goes, oh, I'm sorry, your sister? And I said, I don't believe so. That's Seth's response.
You're in conversation with a drill sergeant.
And then he comes up and gets nose to nose, like, can I kick my ass? And I was like, oh, no. He goes, you keep your eyes forward or I'll gouge them out. You don't ever look at a drill sergeant.
Wow.
And I was like, noted. And I was sitting there like, I left home for this. I want to be back at that.
Right?
I want to be back at the pasta house filling those ice. Those ice bins at Pasta House aren't bad at all. I wish I was still there. But, and then basic training goes on, and I could give you a whole 3 hours about basic training, but it's rough. Drill Sergeant Bowman, Drill Sergeant Stewart, they were our platoon drill sergeants.
How many people in a platoon?
30-ish.
Okay.
Early 30s, 32-ish. I think is usually what they hit.
Did you become close with all those people?
Yeah, it was interesting because for a while you have these long days where you're just getting yelled at and doing everything, real fast. Run upstairs, make your bunk, run downstairs, meet here. You got classrooms to go through. You still got paperwork to fill out. We got to go out, do PT. You got to meet at the pull-up bars and do your pull-ups. You got to make sure you got to stand in line and make sure you've been shaved as the drill sergeants walk up and down. They inspect your lockers. If your socks aren't folded just right, they dump your drawer out. And of course, push-ups are incorporated into everything. So, I was in pretty good shape right off the bat, right? About a week, I'd done a couple thousand push-ups, I think. So,
this bonds you together with your platoon and stuff like that.
And then at night, you finally get a chance to sit and you introduce what's your name, what's your first name, because we only know each other. We're all these guys with shaved heads and the same uniform, and our last name is who we are, and we get to talk. I'm from New York, I'm from Alabama, and then it's funny, the New Yorkers and the Alabama guys are talking. They both have accents, and it's just great to see, and people talking about their girlfriends or jobs back home. So, there was that opportunity to bond every day. And, when the drill sergeants would finally go home to their wives and it was their turn to be yelled at, and then their wives would make them mad and send them back to us at 5 a.m. to wake us up.
And they're just full of new energy to yell at someone else, right?
Yeah. Lights go on, and next thing you know, people are blowing whistles and screaming, so you got to get up again. And the stress, I'll tell you other things we saw in basic training. The stress really gets to people, this is primarily a mental health show. Sure. And I know you could probably do a whole podcast just on what the training does to people. One night, we came into our bunk, and there was a guy laying in bed crying. And we're like, what's up with him? He's like, well, he's sitting on the edge of his bed, like bent over crying. And he had, what he had done is he took the metal clip on his pen, and he broke it off and sharpened it and cut his wrist and just gouged away at his wrist. And it was just blood all over the floor, like a small puddle of blood in front of him. So we went and got the drill sergeant, and he took him away. And I hope he's okay to this day. We never heard or saw anything about him. He was just, hey, you're done now. You got to go once you get to that point. And then there were the quote suicide attempts from guys who just wanted a ticket home, like the guy who tried to drown himself in a mop bucket, and he wasn't actually trying to die. He was just trying to get his ticket home. But then of course there were the serious things like I had mentioned, and one guy in another platoon, I hadn't seen it, but he actually came up with the idea. We had these floor buffers, because that's what you do at night when you're on fire watch, is you buff floors. Okay. And you, of course, every day they inspect the floors, and you have to strip them and buff them again every single day. Wow. I don't know I've watched Karate Kid. I don't know what all these chores are supposed to do, but we are constantly cleaning sinks and toilets, rifles, boots, and buffing the floor. Those things got to be tip-top shape. Wow. So he took the floor buffer, and this guy tied the power cable around his neck. The idea was he jumps out of the third-story window, buffer catches the frame of the window, and he hangs. But he didn't, do the math on his body weight versus how much the cord.
Yeah, good.
So he
just pulled out and landed on the ground.
Yeah, he just jumped and hit the ground.
Wow.
So and then of course that guy goes home. And then of course there were some injuries too, but the platoon got a little smaller. And then finally, February of 2007, the first week of February is graduation week, and we finally graduated from scout school and got to see our families again and go home for a little bit, and then off to Fort Riley, Kansas, where my brother happened to be stationed. He was in Iraq at the time, but he was coming home to Fort Riley, so I got to basically surprise him when he came home from Iraq. I was like, hey, I'm stationed here. So that was cool for him.
That's cool.
So go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so it seems like your options in basic were just to just deal with it, or try to kill yourself in order to get a ticket home. I mean, there wasn't really any in between where, if you were struggling emotionally or mentally, they could give you support or something to help you get through it. It was just
there's a chaplain
you
can
did it
see
all the way through, or you could see a chaplain.
You can go see the chaplain if you'd like to, and then you can go to church. We went to church on Sundays because a lot of guys were like, I've never been to church before, but drill sergeants don't go to the church.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's drill sergeant free.
Yeah.
Sundays were great. You got, for Sundays was like a free day. You clean, we jog in the morning, and it was a pretty simple day. There's only one or two drill sergeants on duty that day. And then of course you got to go to church, and I think lights out was like an hour earlier on Sundays, maybe, if I remember correctly. So Sundays were like the best day. The other 6 were awful.
Did you feel accomplished? I mean, they load you up with a lot of information, a lot of practical stuff that you have to do physically. Did you feel?
I honestly expected a lot more out of the training. It was it's because it's basic training. It's exactly that. Here's how to march. Here's how you sat through a lot of PowerPoints. You sit through a lot of PowerPoints about the weapons before you ever even touch one. And then, of course, we have to take them apart, put them back together. We go to the range, fire at some targets, which is pretty cool. But a lot of it's very pedantic and very just that basic. It's just exposure to different aspects of military life is what it is. You got to know how to salute, when to salute, who to salute. You got to know how to talk to different non-commissioned officers. That's a big part of your training. And then, of course, running, push-ups, pull-ups, obstacle courses. Oh gosh, you want to hear? Here's a good one. The gas chamber is awful. And at our graduation, there's an audience in this big auditorium, and there's a big screen where they play this video. We're like, oh, cool video, and like cool metal music playing, and it's us climbing ropes and marching, and the families get to see here's a mashup of the last few months. And then they show the gas chamber, and everybody's in gas mask, and they take them off, and guess who it is? It's Seth on a big old screen.
Wow.
Snot, mucus, red face, coughing, about to vomit, standing in a gas chamber in front of a huge audience on a big old movie screen.
Wow.
It's like, that's great. The gas chamber is probably my least favorite part of the whole thing, really. It's really terrible. I don't even really understand the
purpose.
Yeah, you go in with your mask on to show that you know how to use it. But I don't understand why they are forced to take it off before you
and then suffer. What in the world?
It's terrible. Well, supposedly it's harmless, but it hurts really bad.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think it's supposed to. Yeah, it's for nerve gas, and yes, they use whatever stuff that's.
They use it for prison riots and stuff.
Yeah, more benign, but it's still. Yeah, you become an automaton under pressure.
And back to your question, I did feel pretty accomplished. I definitely felt is the craziest thing I'd done so far. And, after all the ruck marches, 20 Ks with 40 pounds on your back or whatever it weighed. Yeah. And we had to do 3 hills during that called Misery, Agony, and Heartache. Agony's the worst. It's practically straight up.
Wow.
my knee went out, but I somehow went numb and kept going. Ended up on profile for a while and didn't have to do anything when I first got to my unit.
What's profile?
Medical profile means there's certain activities you can't do, and you keep that card on you. So if sergeant's like, all right, do this, you can pull out your card like I'm on profile because of my knee, and he sees that. So that's all that means. So I was on profile for a few weeks with itibial band syndrome.
Wow.
So, which is really painful if anybody's ever had it.
Yep. So you graduated, then you saw your brother before being deployed to Kansas?
No, we met up in Kansas.
Met up in Kansas.
We were both at Fort Riley. And then that's where some other things, I kind of went back to the partying phase because that's what privates do when they get out of basic. And you got freedom and you got a sign-on bonus. And there are strip clubs and bars everywhere.
Wow.
And we were buying rounds and throwing money around a little bit, going to the mall and buying nice clothes to wear out to the club. And I was like, hey, trying to live like this semi-lavish lifestyle. And with that, like I said, came a lot of drinkings. And that was the beginning of mental health problems for me involving alcohol, because I started getting, I'd already had some kind of like anger issues as a child. And that was really bringing it out of me. Anger and depression were two things I felt a lot during the training, because the training's stressful, and the way I dealt with it, being away from home, being in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, was, alcohol.
Yeah. I'm sure you were not it's the culture, and I'm sure other guys are.
Oh, you'll catch hell if you can't drink straight whiskey or something like that. You think peer pressure in high school is bad at parties? Like, this is like,
a legit attack on your manhood and capability as a soldier if you can't keep up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. You're clowned on, so to speak, for if you got, when somebody hands you straight whiskey, you drink it. You don't put creamer in your coffee either. No sugar or cream or anything. That's foo-foo. That's what they say.
Black coffee.
Yeah.
Wow.
You drink your coffee straight.
Wow.
Manly stuff.
So, how was your depression besides anger? How was your depression manifesting back then?
It's like an overwhelming sadness that came, and I didn't know if it was just being away from home, if I started second guessing my decision.
Right.
And we all know alcohol is just going to cause depression. Like, it's just that's how it is. I'd wake up hungover, and we'd done some ruck marches hungover as well, and some runs that were.
Yes.
Oh gosh, we laugh about it now, but it was just awful. Yeah. I don't know how I got through it.
Hellish,
young we know in our 30s now, it's a lot different,
right?
than when you're in your early 20s. Yeah.
So you eventually were deployed?
Yeah, we were deployed to Iraq in October 2008. I was actually pinned sergeant the weekend before that. So I took over a squad and became a sergeant 4 days before deployment. I didn't have any actual training as an NCO before combat.
Wow.
I went right into it as a squad leader.
How big is the squad? I think that was the question too.
Let's see, there 11 of us?
Okay.
12?
Yeah.
Yeah. Total, it'd be the section sergeant, myself, and then 2 drivers, 2 gunners, and a dismount. And so I think there, 9.
Wow.
I think is what I just counted there.
So a squad's like a third of three in a platoon, roughly?
There's 4 squads and then a sniper attachment. We had a sniper attachment because we were a special reconnaissance team. So.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. How you hopped on a plane there from Kansas straight over to the Middle East?
We went to Ireland, where I paid $30 for some eggs at the airport. And we had assault rifles, so we didn't get to really go anywhere. Wow. So we hung out at the airport there and then went to Kuwait for additional training. That's the training. When you go to Kuwait, we had quite a bit of range time. We did, they had mock combat, urban combat areas where, you go through your room clearing. And this is like, okay, this is the last thing. This tops off everything. Right. We're going to go over searching people, searching houses. We're going to go out to the range. We're going to go over weapons. Right. We're going to go over, there's drills. They had a Humvee attached to a thing that would actually flip it over. And it's like a carnival ride almost. And when it flips over, you got to do your drills on how to get out and pull the gunner down with you and roll. And, there was rollover drills is what they call them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we kind of made fun of those because some of the training's just silly. There's like, remember, if you roll over, the driver will yell, roll over, roll over, roll over 3 times. Then you will secure and we're all sitting here with our notebooks out, not even writing anything, looking at each other like, has this guy ever been in a car accident before?
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna.
We're gonna wait for the third announcement.
Basically, those are the fundamentals, and good luck applying them.
Wow. Wow.
You know. So, but luckily, we never rolled over any vehicles. I don't think in Iraq.
So this was the U.S. base in Iraq. Then it was.
Yeah, this was at what's the name of the camp? I forgot the name of the camp,
Right.
but it's left from early Desert Storm days.
Gotcha.
You know, we set up a base there, and it's still there to this day.
I said Iraq, but Kuwait. So it was
Kuwait,
it was.
Like we were right near the border. You could hear
gotcha.
explosions at night.
Right. Yeah. How did that feel to hear explosions and not be in the thick of it yet, but your first explosions that were really in real war
to
time?
be honest, personally, it's weird how I felt like I should be nervous, but I wasn't. I just felt like I was going to be okay no matter what. And I definitely, just the sound and the smells, like, you know, all that from range time to combat, like it has a smell of the guns burning off all that primer and the explosions and the sounds and the vibrations. It becomes a part of your job. So you're kind of numb to it in a way. You got to think to yourself when you actually get there, oh, that's a real explosion. Right. That's not like the special effects people in camp, in the Mojave Desert in Camp Irwin, where you go there to train, and they have a special effects people that do explosions for you in your training. But so, it was, like I said, I was pretty numb to it. And I was like, why am I not nervous? Is that weird? I just had this feeling like I was going to be okay.
Do you think some of your training kind of inured you to, I mean, you'd been under stress for such a long time, and kind of, did it kind of soften the blow in some ways, or turn down your sensitivity to feeling as anxious and nervous in a situation where maybe you would have previously?
Oh yeah. You got to think, if I went straight from like the skater days of having pizza with Nate, if me and him went through that
straight to
day,
Kuwait.
I know you'd probably curl up in a ball. I don't know, and freak out. You'd probably freeze. In fact, some people do that even after the training. But the training, that's definitely 2 years of thinking about it, having it hung over your head, and sitting through everything from cultural awareness to classes to actual range time and field time training to talking to NCOs and officers that had been there, done that, and are telling stories, because that's probably the best training you're going to get, is just when your squad leaders have been there and he's like,
talking about it.
Okay, here's the training, here's what we're going to go through, and then I'm going to tell you how we actually applied it when we were around.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and so I think that definitely, obviously the training does its job just to prepare you, at least mentally, because the anxious side, the anxiety is just, we're finally here. It was almost like, the first few months, you're like, are we going to deploy? I'm nervous. Where are we going to go? There's rumors we're going to Afghanistan. There's rumors that actually our first rumor was we're going to Crete, which is where Saddam grew up in northern Iraq. And, and they're never true. You find out when they say to call home and tell your families, that they're being serious. So one day, the platoon sergeant came out and said, we're going to Mahmudi, Iraq. We'll be leaving, and we're going to start packing our stuff up in August. And we're like, okay. And he goes, go ahead, and when you leave here, go ahead and call home. And everybody goes,
wow,
like, wow,
we got
the call to call home and let everyone know. So we're like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Separately, some of the first astronauts, say, because they didn't know what they were going to face, they were so trained that they said that actually launching and stuff was kind of a letdown compared to their training, and because it does steel you against some hardships and stuff like that. So they do. I mean, it's effective. That's why they keep doing it. That type of training. So how did you get deployed into active combat?
How do we deploy?
Yeah. Did you drive over the border, or you fly in?
Oh, wow. You travel. You do a lot in those few days. When we leave Kuwait, we got on a. I believe we got on a C-17, or was it a C-130? But we get on this little cargo ship where we're sitting, on the side. You've seen with the big nets, and you're all lined up against the side, and it's probably the roughest flight you'll ever take. Really hot. They have these bars above you that spray mist down. And we're just sitting there, and you can barely hear each other because it's just loud. You know, there's the whole time you're flying, and you can talk to people in your immediate area. And how they land is they shut the engine off and it falls out of the sky.
Jeez Louise.
And that is quite an experience. And then they do what's called a combat landing. I don't know. You'll have to talk to the Air Force about that one. But we got there. We went to, we were in Haisalam, which is another part of Kuwait. That's where we flew out of. And then we landed and we were in Saddam's old airfield, which is southwest of Baghdad. So we're near Camp Liberty and Camp Stryker. And there's like these bombed out, almost pyramid looking buildings that used to be bunkers that were destroyed during Desert Storm that you can still go inside of. And we were stuck there for an entire day on this airfield. And there's nothing to do. Guys would just be playing cards, betting cigarettes and stuff like that. And there's no toilet paper in the porta-johns that they put outside for us. So you take your knife and cut your sleeve off. And if you saw a guy walking around with his sleeve off, you know, he had to go that day. So every once in a while you see somebody walking by with their sleeve missing because that was your toilet paper.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that in many movies.
Yeah, some guys have both sleeves cut off, and like he's either being nice regular to a friend or he maybe had a big breakfast or something. So that was it's you do a lot of traveling. You're not even sure where you're at. It's just go, grab your duffel bags. And then from that airfield, we got on a Chinook. Those are the helicopters with the two rotors. Two rotors. And that flew us to Camp St. Michael's, better known as FOB Mahmudiya. FOB is a forward operating base. It's a little camp. So it's where Stryker, Liberty are big bases. This would be a forward deployed. You're more out into the ish, so to say, or so to speak. So that was where we're at. Mahmudiya, which is 20 miles south of Baghdad, maybe something like that.
You have not run into locals yet, or anybody? You have not run into.
Kuwait, like all the people that clean and serve the food and the contractors. You see people from all over the world. We were next to the Australian Army.
Wow.
They really do say cheer. They say cheers is how they say hello and goodbye. They were just big, strong men. They were probably like 12 too. They were like in Australia, you're a man when you're like 12. That's why Silverchair came out when they were 15 years old. That's a metal band from back in the day. But you know, and we saw people from all over the world so far. But as far as locals, like going through a town and to a village, and we hadn't seen any of them just yet.
And the cultural awareness training is what kind of cultural awareness stuff did they train you?
Oh, basic phrases to what's considered very impolite. Things things about their culture that you're just not going to know that you need to be sensitive to because you're representing the United States Army. We're not there like just mowing things down like we're invading or anything. We're trying to. At this time, we started more of like the winning hearts and minds is what they called it. So, there's times we'd go out and we've risked our lives driving down streets where bombs could be hidden to take anything from medical supplies to school supplies to water to these places. And you got to be careful in some places. They tell us, if you hand out water to children and the wrong person sees it, that child could be murdered for accepting a gift from an American. Yeah. So you gotta be. That's part of the awareness, knowing which part of Iraq you're in. Or is this a place where they, is this more Sunni where they, tend to like us a little more? Is this more a Shiite area where they're a little more fascist, a little more American? We'll just say anti-American, for lack of a better term, where they flip you off and throw rocks at your vehicle, burn American flags, things like that. Wow. And I'll tell you something, when it comes to Shiites and Sunnis, okay, so Sunnis typically were more on our side, and that's like your southern region. And then you go up north, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody's listening, that would be more of a Shiite area. And they were very they hated us.
You're the enemy.
They hated us and they hated Sunnis. So then Ashura came in February. This is a holiday, and this is the first time they were allowed to celebrate it since Saddam had been taken out of power. And what they do is they march down the big highway that separates, Iraq. It goes all the way down and from like Mosul in that area through Baghdad and then down south. And they walk this entire highway, just thousands, millions of people just marching, and they have flags and signs, and they chant and they break things. And these are all Shiites going down to a temple to pray. It's like a little journey, and then they walk back.
Pilgrimage. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a way. Like a big pilgrimage, but everybody's going. And they would also, to represent the torture of a certain prophet, they would cut themselves with razors and be covered in blood, and they'd also whip themselves, and they'd be covered in welts as well. And then during the day, it was moderately calm. You might have a few things thrown at you because they did not like us at all. But at night, it'd get a little crazy. People would bang on windows, and even it was more like a riot almost. And you'd see where things were being set on fire, and more rocks and trash being thrown and stuff like that. And it's crazy because our job during this time was to protect those that hated us from being attacked by those who were on our side.
Wow.
So that puts us in like a really odd position.
Right.
Wow.
And to observe this, our area was in an abandoned building in a small little town called Lutafia, which was where they'd set up a patrol base, the Iraqis did. So we worked really close with an Iraqi company down there.
Wow.
And we stayed in a building on cots. And probably the worst part of the deployment as far as living conditions go is just truly awful. We were living off MREs. And we actually brought a weight bench and set up a weight room. So we did that. And they had, this is crazy. They had holes in the ground. Because we all know what they do. You know, that's where they go. And it's right out in the open. There's a line of holes, and they put porcelain in the holes into the dirt. So when they say they crap in holes, these aren't just holes they dig real quick, like an animal.
Yeah.
These are nice holes.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, this is ridiculous. So one of our snipers, very ingenuitive guy, got a metal chair frame that didn't have any pads on it and zip tied a toilet seat to it and put it over over the hole. And the Iraqi soldiers thought that was the funniest thing to sit in a chair with a hole in it and then do your business instead of just squatting.
Wow.
Because you're on a different side of the world.
Yeah.
More cultural awareness.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And they just thought that was hilarious. But one more thing about Ashura is like, the Shiites really, they're very passionate. And one of my job, when we left Mahmadiyya to head to Lutafia, anytime we left, what my job was I was in the lieutenant's truck, and we'd go out and block the highway, and I'd point a 50 cal down the road so everybody could come around behind me, and then they'd drive, and then we'd follow them in the rear. We'd pick up the rear, and then we'd go. When I did that, I had to, instead of just watching traffic, now I have to block a sacred holiday being celebrated by thousands of people. And I pulled up and blocked them with my machine gun. And they didn't like that, and they weren't scared at all. They were yelling something in Arabic, which basically daring me to shoot him. Dude had his arms out and was right up in front of my gun, like, go ahead. And I was like, these people, they're not messing around. This is scary.
Different purpose.
They are ready to die.
Right.
It's crazy. But luckily there wasn't anything too crazy that happened that particular week. It was 4 or 5 days we were living in Lutafia. And then they finally gave us the okay to pack our stuff and go back. And we never thought we'd want to see Mahmadiyya so bad in our lives.
I'm sure.
We're like, wow, this place is pretty nice compared to that building.
Yeah.
So that was cool to get out of that.
How long were you in Iraq total? Or you did several deployments?
Just 1 year, basically 10 months in Iraq, bookended by a month in Kuwait on each side.
Both sides.
So,
Yeah. And so how did it go? What happened while you were there? 10 months.
The 10 months. I mean, combat, like just patrols, days, nights. I don't know. It's that's a pretty vague question. What happened while you were there? A lot,
right.
a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a few explosions. I woke up to a lot of that.
Right.
And so we were actually one morning, me and my buddy Sean, who is an excellent attorney and just put a really horrible murderer in prison. So hats off to Sean. Right. He's doing a great job. But he was a sergeant also at the time. We went from tents. We actually moved to a Camp Striker where we lived in Choose, CHU, something housing unit, compact housing unit or something like that.
Okay.
And then, which is just 2 beds and 2 lockers, and you each, 2 guys to each one. They're pretty small, about the size of this
Still
dining
a
room.
tent, though, essentially?
A little trailer kind of thing.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, and then we have shower trailers and big concrete walls to protect us. And we live next to an airfield that had helicopters flying in constantly.
Wow.
So that's another thing. When I got home, it was weird. I couldn't sleep at night because it's too
So quiet.
It
Yeah,
felt weird. I almost
absolutely.
wanted to get like a CD of helicopter noise to play or something at the time.
That's intense.
I say CD because it was 2009.
Yeah.
All the way back in
yes.
2009. CDs. Yeah. So,
So during your deployment, how was your mental health, throughout it?
up and down, really down. Just there's anxiety and there's definitely anger issues, and that was seen throughout the platoon. You could definitely see guys change.
Yeah.
That's definitely. I don't know all the right
That's all right.
terminology for it, but there's definitely. I was going to tell you that day, me and Sean were sitting in that chew, and all of a sudden it started shaking like an earthquake. And then we went to Chow, and we saw on the news, they had national news on there that nearby us, outside the FOB or outside camp in Baghdad, a car bomb had gone off and leveled like an entire block of buildings.
Wow.
So, it's just things like that every once in a while that would keep you awake. And back to your question, like I said, you'd see a lot of changes in guys, and towards the end we had fights break out. The camaraderie. I wouldn't say the camaraderie was necessarily breaking down, but it was definitely we were tired of being around each other.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you're dealing with stress and you're seeing the same person all the time. You eventually just, it doesn't take much for somebody to set you off. And we were breaking up fights. Guys, you could tell, weren't sleeping very well. I'm not going to get into too much detail about this particular private, but I had to take his weapon from him. I actually took him to the gym and let him beat the hell out of the heavy bag with my kickboxing gloves on, and because he had some problems back home.
Yeah.
And
Is mental health, was that your job as a sergeant, or was it or did you have help?
One of your
for that
jobs?
piece?
One of
Yeah.
your many jobs?
see, the thing is, it is, but you don't get a ton of training in that area as far as exactly how to mentor soldiers during that time. You do have to look out for certain things. They told me, you did the right thing. You took his weapon and you went right to the platoon sergeant. You found a backup driver because we didn't want him on patrol. And you can tell guys, you can tell me, you can go talk to the chaplain. You just got to remind them of their resources and keep an eye on them. And I'd tell guys, we'd go do our rounds. You'd bring your squad in. Is everybody calling home? When was the last time you called home? When was is everything okay between you and the wife? Let me know if there's anything, going on. Because, you got to, I don't know, I'd hate to say you got to just focus through and focus on your job. Because at that point you're a soldier, and mental health is important, but,
It's, compared to coming back to the United States, and that's what you're going to lead us to, hopefully, about back in the United States eventually in mental health. I don't think the typical mom and dad or American knows when people are having a hard time and mental health deployed for whatever reason, alcohol, whatever, or bombs, that it's oftentimes somebody like you, a sergeant, and a pastor. That's the extent of it out in the front lines.
So basically, when we returned home, a big part of adapting was the culture shock. And it was so weird. We finally got to pack up and come home, and you come home and it feels like you've been gone forever.
Yeah.
It starts to feel like it went by fast, but people's hair are different length. They're driving different cars. Kids are talking that could barely talk before. It's just, it's very different. And then of course, you're back, you got the green grass you can walk on, and you're by yourself. Sometimes you're never by yourself over there.
Right.
You always have your weapon. You always have your guys. We controlled traffic when we were there, but when you're stuck, the road rage was a huge problem for me. And then of course, I went back to my friend alcohol for comfort, which wasn't a good idea.
Whenever you return back to the United States, do you decompress somewhere in Europe or somewhere, or do you anything before you come back to where Springfield, right back to Springfield?
Oh no, we went back to Fort Riley, and then we got a 4-day pass to go home. And you have your post-deployment leave. It's not right away, but because you got a lot of stuff to do when you get back. You got to go through customs, and then you got to fly all the way back, and then you go and you got to get all your equipment, turned back in. You got to undo everything you did before you left.
Right.
So, and there's just, I could go on and on, but there's just a lot of work that goes back in there. There's paperwork. You got to see a counselor. You got to wait in line to go in and have, a counselor basically sit and read from a card. But,
Wow.
and just ask you certain questions.
To screen you for PTSD?
Yeah, you're being screened for, I guess, PTSD, just anything, really. Any kind of problem they might see. They'll ask you questions about, did you discharge your weapon? Have you been, were you near any dead bodies? Stuff like that. So, yeah, I remember that. They just drill you with a lot of questions and then bring the next person in.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're trying to get out of there as fast as humanly possible rather than rack your brain for everything you could possibly explain and say yes to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're like, I just want to get out of here as soon as possible. So whatever answer you want to hear that gets me out of here is kind of it, especially when you wait in line forever and you're hungry and you just got home and everything. So so after you do all that, you get your family time and then eventually get your leave. And it was a hard time to decompress. I had a year left in the Army and I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do that last year. I just wanted to go home. And again, alcohol became a thing, anger issues. I had my brother and our really close friend, a mutual best friend, you can say, approach me and say that I should look into getting help, that I had changed. I was showing some signs. Mainly people were talking about the anger problems, the depression I managed to bottle up pretty well. And then after that, after that year, I was back in Jacksonville, Illinois for a little while at my parents' house, staying in their guest room, getting ready to go to community college. It's just a very, very weird transition to be a sergeant on this kind of reconnaissance team that served this time in Iraq. And
kind of a crazy full circle, right?
It was crazy. It's like I was right back at that Pizza Hut, and and it's like I said, it's really weird being alone and trouble sleeping. Weird, you're laying in bed at night, you're reliving scenarios in your head.
Right.
It's really hard to reach out to somebody. You don't know what to say.
I was going to say because this is the VA at this point, or somebody else, friends and family.
Actually, shout out to Sergeant Jimmy Duncan, a Vietnam vet who started Vet to Vet. Vet to Vet is in Illinois, in my hometown, and it's a helping veterans organization. Cool. And he was, like I said, a Vietnam vet, and he brought in all the young veterans, and it's like, I want to see you guys come home better than how we had it. It wasn't pretty when we came home, and you guys need better, from the VA just down to how you're treated socially. Like,
yes.
So Jimmy, he's a big influence and big help during that time, and I met him before I shipped out, so we'd already known each other. So it was cool. It's just cool being in a room. Like, we'd go to meetings. We had meetings every Thursday night, and you're in this room. It's just different generations. You had Vietnam all the way down to guys my age, and we'd hang out and drink some beers, and we'd talk, and it was a closed door. It's like, you guys, we're here, and anybody can say anything. Yeah. And that was a huge help too, just seeing other guys open up, and it took me a very, very long time to really talk. Me and Jim actually had a lot of private conversations because I'm not real big. I'm not an emotional person. I have problems sometimes opening up. And, Jim was there for me. He's the first person I told when Sergeant Benton, my buddy Jason, he was in our platoon. And I got a call. I'd been trying to get a hold of him because I knew he wasn't doing well. And then I got a call in July 17th of 2012 that he had committed suicide. And that was really rough. That hit the platoon. Even though we weren't a platoon anymore, we still all kept in touch. And, that hit us really, really hard to see somebody like Jason, like such a good soldier and sniper and leader and all these things, good father to his stepdaughter, really just tough as nails, to see him, lose that battle so to speak, was pretty eye-opening. And I kicked myself, but I did everything I thought I could.
Yes.
Of course.
I called and didn't get I called other people to confirm he still had the same phone number. I sent him messages on Facebook and everything saying, why don't you come stay with me for a while? And I couldn't do anything from 8 hours away from where he was living.
Yes.
Except that. So
even people next to him sometimes can't reach into his brain and help him out.
So that was a huge eye opener for all of us.
In what way? What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know, eye opener as much as a shock. Just saying a shockwave through us. Like Jason of all people, did that. And then our buddy Luna in our platoon's the one I found out he was staying with, and he wasn't supposed to have a gun, but he found one. He had it hidden somewhere. And he went in and found him in his bedroom. So Luna's the one that found him. Yeah.
Do you think you guys were maybe, you kept saying eye opening. I was thinking maybe your eyes were open to like this trauma that you all experienced together really had real effects.
Yeah. It became a little more real that maybe we're not okay. Maybe all of us need to keep in contact more, seek help, be more open. We don't want this to happen again. Right. And then it did a few months ago. Our buddy Edward Riviello from Long Island. Of course, if your name's Eddie Riviello, you can't be from anywhere but Long Island, New York. Great guy. 2 deployments, and I found out he committed suicide. It was earlier. It was like less than a year ago. So it's just tough when you think it's over. And then he wasn't in our platoon, but he was in our unit, and we knew him pretty well.
So that's from like 2008 to just a year ago? Wow. Yeah.
So it had 3 total suicides. I didn't know the other guy. He was from, I believe, Bravo Company. Wow. But
all in your unit?
Yeah, we got the call as Thanksgiving, and my squad leader, Sergeant Hernandez, called me, and it's like, hey, we don't have to report in or anything, but they do want us to know that one of the guys from the unit did kill himself.
Is there anything we're going to have soldiers? We're going to have a strong military in the United States. Is there anything to help people who are going to go into the military, going to serve? Is there anything to help before, during, after that you would like to see? You think that might have helped? Could help? Going
in, I'd say do your research and make sure it's exactly what you want to do. And I wouldn't try to ever talk anybody out of it. I'm not going to use my experience to tell anybody to discourage anybody or try to scare them. I'd like to encourage them because it does open. I wouldn't have it any other way. People say, do you miss the Army? I'm like, I miss those guys. I wouldn't do it again unless it was with them. Right. I would leave today. I'd get a bag and go to Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere they wanted to send me, regardless of what's going on. People, if I was with those guys, I don't care how awful it is. I'm going because I've already been there and did it. But other people going in, I'd say just make sure it's what you want to do. But I don't want to scare anybody away. I'd be better at just helping them adjust to life coming home. Because, don't reach for alcohol.
That's a hard one.
We've talked about this on the show, and I've mentioned it a few different times now. But that was my friend for a while when I felt I had nobody, and it even led to me coming close to being, one of the guys that everybody's going to be getting a call about, because I got so bad. There was one time where life was just throwing so many curveballs at me and I couldn't do it anymore. And I was just having so many problems mentally and financially, and just nothing was working. And I kind of made that decision too. And I called my mom, and I don't even know if I really realized what I was doing, but I did call her, and it was basically to say sorry and say goodbye. And that day, it was in summer of 2014, my mom actually had to talk me out of killing myself over the phone, which I will say she did a great job at, staying calm and really just talking. And
yes,
it just, she said, think about this, think about that. And, after that conversation, life was still pretty rough. It took a while, for me to walk away from some of the things that were some of the self-inflicted punishment, namely alcohol. Again, I don't want to turn this into a whole soldiers and alcohol thing. Real. But that's the thing, because soldiers, like we talked about earlier, It's a big part of
It is.
being a
It's our
soldier.
culture.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Did you have to change anything about like the people you hung out with or the places that you went to? I mean, like socially and culturally, it's almost inescapable. How did you manage to stop drinking?
well, actually, the funny thing is, when I first came back, I hated going to bars and clubs and concerts. I did not like crowds.
Sure.
I didn't like the noise. I didn't like
Hypervigilance,
people
yeah.
bumping me. I didn't like not having a weapon on me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, somebody here has a weapon, and I had a weapon. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But like, it's that training. It's almost robotic.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then, but back to your question, it was during the pandemic when I finally quit. So it was a little easier in that aspect because there weren't really bars, but I'd really decided that it's just best to walk away. And I didn't have any problems like any what's the word I'm looking for?
Withdrawals.
Addiction.
Withdrawals, yeah,
Withdrawals,
stuff like that. I didn't have any problems like that. I actually felt better and better and better.
Yeah.
And the better I felt, the more I wanted to just stay away from it.
How long was it before you start feeling? Was it a few hours after you stopped, or is it a month later? Or
What do you mean?
Thought you were feeling better.
when did you start feeling better? And what was it that you felt better about?
I felt good about the decision because I somehow knew that this time it was going to take. I'd said it before, when you wake up hungover, like, oh, I'm done. But this time I was like, I'm done. I got to be done. It's killing me. I got to go away. I'm behind schedule with everything I want to do with my life. And it's, and I thought to myself, the only problems I have are alcohol related. Like mental health, financial health, the physical health. I was going to the gym very much. And I replaced that with, I've done some meditating, a lot of exercising, getting better sleep. And I encourage people to do these things.
Yeah.
And then sensory deprivation therapy, as many people know, is floating. I actually got a part-time job at a float clinic and learned a lot about that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so I started floating there and getting them good old theta waves going. Because you have 5 brain waves.
Even I don't know. I have to look it up.
Yeah, I believe. Well, there was stuff we had to study for customers when we answered their questions. We had to become neuroscientists all of a sudden. So it shuts down your alpha waves and starts producing theta waves, which are produced while you're asleep. But now they're being produced while you're awake, and it's very relaxing and very. It just takes all that stress out of you, and you just have this overwhelming feeling that things are going to be okay. And it's also good physically for like recovery if you work out. People have used it for addiction, PTSD, depression, anxiety. People use it for joint pain, just detox. So I strongly recommend people look into floating if you're looking for something very therapeutic.
Sometimes when you try to quiet your brain, things that have been brewing inside kind of come to the surface.
You just
but you can
eradicate.
You can push it away.
Yeah, you shut off all the stimuli, all of it, visual, audio, all the stuff we hear all the time, from car horns to doors slamming, every little thing that interrupts us throughout the day. It's just gone, and it's just you. Nothing exists. You're in the dark, floating in that water, and you just at first you're like, this is kind of weird. I don't think it's working, and then after a while you're just like, oh, this is nice. I never want to leave.
I mean, that was probably like one of your body's first real moments of rest and like very little stimulus since you were 18. I mean, like ever, yeah,
really, because even when you're laying on a mattress, you're still putting some pressure on your joints in different areas at some point. This is basically as close as you can get to just floating and being nothing for a while. Which is good. You should be. Yeah, I think everybody should spend an hour or two being nothing once a week. Really, it's great.
Some of the stuff you described, obviously, is we know nowadays is just your brain became hypersensitive to everything, all stimuli and everything else. So that's from the trauma, and that's why it was hard to sleep, et cetera, and turn off your mind when everything's safer and quieter. And people forget that it takes sometimes professional help. You can't just can't wait it out and wait for months and a few years for it to go away. You need professional help to help kind of desensitize you to that overactive hypervigilance.
Yeah, so that's like kind of the message. Like, don't be afraid to reach out for help, and people know. We don't have to harp on it too much or to know what's bad for us, but we reach for it anyways. Like people, like when they're stressed out and they pull out a cigarette, you're training your body that stress equals cigarette.
Right.
So
that's right.
Just try to.
Or relief equals cigarette. Yeah.
Now my only vice these days is those damn Dr. Peppers. I'm really trying to get off soda. Soda's really bad. Yeah. You could probably do a show about the mental health problems caused by diet sodas. and what they're finding out about that.
There's and as we know that people reach for anything that's comforting and whatever it is, and I think that's part of what we have to do. We can't tell people just to stop alcohol. We have to trade something to help them because their anxiety is still there, all the underlying stuff that they're dealing with that they're self-medicating for.
Yeah, I haven't had a cigarette since I was 30, and I still will destroy little pieces of paper or mess with a pen or something to this day. Right. But I don't crave cigarettes. They make me sick when I'm near them. Like, I hate them. Yeah. So that's another thing. 7 years smoke-free, almost 3 years alcohol-free.
Yeah. Congrats.
That's awesome,
enormous.
Seth. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And that's the story of the day. Me and Nate wanted to go get pizza. Comes all around.
Well, we appreciate what you've been able to, number one, serving our country. Number two, being able to come back and become healthier for yourself and for the people that you're helping support like us here with our podcast. And how's your brother?
He's doing all right. He installs cable.
All right.
And I wish he doesn't drink though. So that's good. He quit that too a while back. And I don't think it was any like big thing. He's kind of stopped liking it. He used to love his Jack Daniels, but he kind of stopped doing that. I wish he'd do more to exercise and take care of his physical and mental health. But he's stubborn. He's so stubborn. He's going to smoke cigarettes and eat what he wants and just whatever. He's like, we're all going to die someday anyways. I'm going to have fast food if I want. So I'm like, all right, to each their own. That's the libertarian in me.
That's right. You're a good role model, and you're right. Even if you pay a therapist, they can't tell you what to do and expect you to follow through. So good for you for being a good role model. Anything else that you think is important that is part of your story, which hopefully people recognize bits and pieces in them and know that things could be better if there are the difficult parts that you described? Is there anything else that you think is important that you want some of your friends to have known or younger you to have known or heard?
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well. Like, I just hope people pull what they can from different, like we talked on the phone last night about how, there's different mental and even physical health topics just throughout this story, from basic training to combat to what it was like adapting back to civilian life. So if you're going to join the military, like I said, make sure it's what you want to do and do your research, and proud of anybody that goes through with it. And if you are a veteran that needs help, get it. Like there's resources out there. We'll put some. I'll find some and we'll put some in the description for the podcast for sure. Absolutely. I don't have any links on me, but we'll do that and use your resources, please. You
had a special. It was a volunteer. It was a volunteer. That was a big deal. I think that helped you out because it was not the VA. You didn't have to whenever you you came back, and you're going through the mental health checklist that you just wanted to get out of that office. Because that's the stuff, unfortunately, people are faced with, is this regimented stuff that the military can tell Congress that we're taking care of our vets.
Really blanket kind of.
And it's not as effective as a friend and privacy and other friends, other people that you befriended. I think that's enormous lesson that we don't have to spend billions and billions of dollars and that sometimes that's all you need is somebody to be able to listen, to sit down to repeatedly, not just once, not just a quickie check in, but as you developed your sense of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do with your life, that you had people there to help you out through the bumpy parts and stuff. So,
you can always talk to a fellow vet. It doesn't matter what kind of health insurance you got. You can always call a fellow vet and talk to them.
That's a good point. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
No, thanks, Seth. Thanks for sharing a good part of your life, large part of your life with us.
Absolutely. I just want to commend you for your bravery, sir. For going in the first place. I think the braver part is coming back and sticking around to deal with the aftermath and figure out who you want to be and what you want to do afterwards. And I think that's an incredible role model and the definition of American hero, man. Really.
Thank you.
That's what it's about.
If I didn't do the things I should have done, like if I'd never joined the military, and then of course the second part of that is doing the things to take care of myself mentally and physically, then I wouldn't own my own business and be healthy and happy. And I don't know what I'd be doing, but it wouldn't be this. And I'm really happy that I'm here with you guys now. So
that's awesome. All right, so our guest today has been Seth Gabriel. You can find him on Facebook at Seth Gabriel. Coming soon is going to be his new website for Benton Park Media. He's the owner and founder of Benton Park Media, multimedia and production and marketing company, and he produces this podcast, and he is our friend. And thank you for sharing with us and hanging out today.
No, thank you. It's been fun, really.
Guys, if you have any questions or want to reach out, happy Veterans Day. If you want to give us any feedback for the podcast or get a hold of us in any way, you can reach us at notyourdocpod@gmail.com. That's notyourdocpod@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
This previous podcast represents my opinions and the opinions of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I'm not establishing a physician-patient relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions that you may have.